processing to distinguish the images, materials. So one of the major techniques we follow to distinguish the objects is called indexing method. So we use 2 or 3 bands. Bands is basically said, meaning that the different bandwidth interval recorded by the sensors. So we use 2 or 3 different bands. So if you see in the left side of the graph, the dark green shows the reflectance of a healthy plant. But on the other hand, the next one shows the lower reflectance due to the kind of stress it's exposed. It may be the water or nutrient stress. So the reduction in the reflection can be easily extracted using this indexing method. So in the near infrared region, it's clearly discriminating the stress effect in the reflection. So if you use this formula, for example, the near infrared can have the ability to reflect 40% of healthy vegetation, and only 5% of the red portion can able to reflect only 5% of the healthy vegetation. On the contradiction, the same red band can able to reflect 35% of the stressed vegetation due to the, for example, the leaf properties can be changed due to the stress. So the chlorophyll content in the leaves can be degraded. So that may affect the reflectance. So we got higher reflectance. So by applying the normalized vegetation index, we can able to distinguish the healthy vegetation to the normal vegetation, stressed vegetation. So here we can see like the spectral indices of healthy vegetation is somewhere around 0.8. Due to the stress, it degraded to 0.1. So this kind of indexing can able to distinguish the different health status, or it can be used for the health crop monitoring purposes. So basically what satellite images are doing is they are collecting the information about an object without doing any physical contact. So this we are seeing in our day-to-day activities. It's nothing but our eyes. What our human eyes are doing, it's without touching any object, it try to sense some information, and it is processed in our brain, and we are understanding that we are seeing a tree or we are watching a movie. So the same principle is applied in the satellite mechanism. So as I said, the satellites are having sensors, and the sensors can able to get some information that is reflected from the various features in the earth. So basically, sun is emitting the radiation. That radiation is reflected back, and it is recorded in the sensors. So for our human eyes, whatever we are seeing is processed in our brain. Similarly, for satellite, we have the ground stations. We have the high computational computers and some programs, algorithms, which help to process these images, and we can able to retrieve some information. So this entire process is called remote sensing. And so I just want to give some overall summary about how the remote sensing works. What, as I said, there are we have the different resolution images from less than 1 meter to 100 kilometers, and we have the various spectral resolution, means the number of bands used in this imagery is mostly we are having bands in the visible and infrared region. So as I explained the previous slide, infrared region is the one important area which the human cannot see, but It has given a lot of information about the crop stand. Sorry. Similarly, we have the satellite images, which is capturing the image starting from less than 5 days to once in 16 days. The one last resolution in the remote sensing imageries is called radiometric resolution. That's basically the image can able to how much distinguishable of contrastness. Say for example, if we have grayscale image, it is having the value of 0 to 255. Then if the camera can able to distinguish the shade of 225 colors. So if you have higher bit images, then you can able to record various contrast of images. So in nutshell, remote sensing images can give larger coverage, and we can able to continuously monitor the land surface features. This can be used for wider applications, not only to the agriculture or water. We can use it for ocean monitoring. We can use it for urbanization planning. We can monitor the climate change effect in the Antarctic. And due to the development in technology, the lot of government agencies are spending a lot of money in it. Most of the images right now we can get it at free of cost. So there are a lot of websites in the NASA or the European Space Agency. They are giving very good satellite images at free of cost. So these things will give the idea like we have the abundant potential of latest geospatial technologies. We can apply it to any field. So there is no constraint in it. With this, I move to the second part of the session. Like we know we have the lot of technology, but how we can use it for some real world problems like improving the irrigation quantity or effectively irrigate the crops. So the effective irrigation of crops depends on many factors. So only the technology cannot help to improve. So this to improve the efficient irrigation in a farm, we need to consider many factors like what kind of crops they are growing. So what is the climate or the weather condition prevailing in that region? What is the major soil types they are growing in that region? For example, if there is a clay soil, we can irrigate less amount of water because the soil can able to hold moisture for more number of time. So this is all about these three: the type of crop, that present climate condition, and what type of soil. These are all prevent to the particular field or the farm. But other than this, there are the other set of variables. That is, what is the source of irrigation? Whether they are digging the bore well and they are getting water from it, whether they are dependent on the river or they have the nearby dams, which is providing the canal irrigation. Then the next one is called water rights. It's slightly different in Indian context. Say, for example, in Israel, people cannot take water on their own. So water is completely belongs to government. So they can dig any borewell or they can't pump water from the river. So countries like in Europe or in the Middle East, so the government holds the full water rights. So people buy the water from their government. So if they are going for the purchasing of water, then they have to think more, like it's a investment. Similarly, the distribution system, like the way the water reaches from its source to the end plant root, how much loss is happening. If you are going for the traditional irrigation, the application loss is more than 40%. But if you're going for the latest technology like drip, we can improve the application efficiency up to 90%. Then the next one is like the socio-economic condition of the farmers. This is very well be considered in the Indian context. Like The Indian farmers, most of them are belongs to the s- small and marginal farmers, so they can't afford investing more money on to improve the irrigation infrastructure. But if you see the other context, say the country like Australia, the minimum farmland is like 500 to 1000 hectares. So the investment on water is relatively easy for them. So the last part is the technological part. We are getting all the information from the farm, from the distribution system, from the socio-economic condition of the farmers. Everything will be processed and it will be, the irrigation schedule can be planned. So as I said from the beginning, so planning for efficient irrigation involved in many influencing factors. See, these are all the major types of irrigation systems which is prevailed in the all over the world. So the first one is the drip. This is the sprinkler, and this we called ridges and furrow irrigation. This one is flooding, so it is mainly used for rice cultivation. And if you see the application efficiency of these irrigation systems, as I said earlier, the micro irrigation can have the application efficiency of 95%. In the contradiction, the traditional method, conventional methods have the application efficiency to 50 to 70%. That means if you are applying 100 liters of water, only 50 liters of water reaching the plants. And the next one is how much it is used for the plant for its growth, whether we have applied in the right time. So that's the next question. So the thing is, out of these various influencing factors, the one area we can able to use our recent technology is the perfect quantification of irrigation. That's also not easy, as I said. Like the plant irrigation demand is influenced by again so many parameters. What's the climate? What's the uh, climate prevalent in the region? What types of soil it is grown? So what kind of crop it is? Say for example, if there is a huge air temperature, then the evaporation will be more. So the plant need more water. And say the plant was grown in a sandy soil, it cannot hold moisture for longer time. So we have to frequently irrigate, depending on the crop. So if you are growing a crop like rice, it needs a huge amount of water. And if you're going like some millets, it requires once in 5 days or 7 days. So that's sufficient. So quantifying irrigation, even at the plant level, also a difficult part. To make it simple, we can quantify the crop water demand in three different ways. One is at the below surface, like based on the what kind of soil we can quantify, like depending on the soil type, we can irrigate the plants accordingly. Similarly, depending on the crop type. So if it is a tree crop, if it's a cereal, if it is a grass crop like sugarcane, so that based on that we can also decide the irrigation planning. The next one is the climate, the prevailing weather condition. So depending on the wind speed, relative humidity, or the air temperature, we can calculate the evapotranspiration happening at that field, and we can plan the irrigation. So compared to the weather-based irrigation, the soil-based or the plant-based irrigation gives better understanding, because even if you quantify the weather can be uniform for the longer spatial region, but for the particular plant, it is directly stick to the soil type and the crop type. So how we can I will go by one. Like I will start with how we can quantify the irrigation at soil level, how we can quantify the irrigation with the crop type. So how we can measure the soil water content for better irrigation. So there is a traditional technology like conventional method. We can collect the samples from the field and we can measure what is the soil type by measuring the soil properties like how much percentage of sand, silt, clay present in the soil types. So we can define its soil texture. So there is a clear-cut field-based relationship between the different soil types and how much amount of water it can hold. So if you see the clay soil, it can hold maximum water in the soil, but due to the property of high bonding nature, the availability of water to the plant is very less. On the other hand, sands are in the other side, which is can able to hold less amount of water, but the major portion of the sand can be available in the water available in the sand can be available to the plants, but it cannot hold the water for longer time. So the ideal soil for the most of the crops fall in this region, like the loamy soil or silt having high clay contents. So it can hold maximum soil water, and more than 50% of its soil water is available to the plants. So by collecting the soil samples from the field, we can able to derive these properties. After that, we can go for a irrigation scheduling calculation. Since we know the soil properties, we know how much amount of water it can hold, and from the weather station, we will come to know how much amount of evaporation is happening in the field, and due to the different texture nature, there is some amount of water can be go into the deeper layer through percolation process. So considering all these factors, we can come to know how much we can irrigate. So if your crop of, for example, for a 6-month crop, we have to go for a daily calculation by considering how much rainfall received during that time, what is the daily temperature and humidity or wind speed to calculate the evaporation, through which we can able to derive the readily available water for the plant growth. So this is like a tedious process, like every farmer cannot afford to do the soil sampling, or if you want to go for a regional planning, how much soil sample we can able to take. So this is a tedious process which cannot be go for a large population. So the other type is we can use some sensors. So the sensors can be deployed in the field, either in the plant or in the soil. So here I given the example of both types. So this one is the soil sensors. So it's basically measure the electrical conductivity between these. And the soil sensors has some probes, the pads, so which we will insert in the soil. So the electric conductivity between these two pads will give the indirect indication of how much water is present in the soil. For example, if there is a wet soil, the electrical conductivity will be more. So there is a less resistance will be observed between these two probes. So we will get low output from these sensors. On the other hand, if there is no water in the soil, the electricity exchange between these two pads will be very less. So we will get the high output of voltage, high voltage output. This is the indirect indication we need to start the irrigation. So this is one type of sensor which can be deployed in the field, and we can easily measure the soil moisture. The other thing is we can directly measure the plant water demand by deploying keeping the sensors in the plant itself. So here I have given the example of a pressure chamber. Here they have inserted the pressure chamber in the stem. So this pressure chamber try to measure the plant water potential. So the external pressure will be applied in the plant. So if there is enough water in the plant, there is a less pressure is needed to extract water from the stem. If the plant is having exposed to the stress, there is no water in the plant, we have to apply more pressure to extract the water from the stems. So this is another way we can able to understand whether how much water we have to give to the plants. Again, this sensor based methodology also time consuming. We can't keep the sensors for each and every field, and it's a laborious. We have to involve a lot of human labors to measure these activities, and it's expensive also. Like small and medium scale farmers cannot afford to buy the sensors for their low income cash crops, and the sensors giving information for the particular field. This information cannot be applied to the newer region. So these are all some of the drawbacks or the challenges in the field-based irrigation methods. These challenges can be easily addressed by the satellite technology. As I said, the satellite technology, it's able to do the continuous monitoring, and it's giving available at free of cost. We can cover the larger region, since the sensors can able to capture the single image of entire village or district, even a state. So whatever the existing drawbacks in the current irrigation quantification, we can able to address these issues using this geospatial technology. So how we can use the remote sensing technology for a better irrigation quantification? There are various methods has been adopted by different researchers. So one of the prominent method suggested by the FAO. FAO is the Food and Agriculture Organization. Their irrigation standards are the most commonly used methods by majority of the growers all over the world. So this technique is called crop coefficient based irrigation. We call it as KC. If you see the middle, the ETC represents the amount of crop water requirement required by the crops. The ETO is the reference evapotranspiration. The reference ET tells the on an ideal condition how much evaporation is happening in a field. This can be measured using the weather station. So in the weather station, we have the wind speed, relative humidity, solar radiation. So there is a well-developed Pennant-Montague equation, or different ET-based equations are there. So based on the weather station measurements, we can able to calculate the reference evapotranspiration. The next one is we have to calculate the crop coefficient. So crop coefficients, if you see in the figure in the middle, it shows the various stages of the crop growth. So initially crop in the beginning, it's in the growth looks very minimum. So over the period in the vegetation stage, the crop growth attains its growth ability. It's a peak rate. Then the growth is got stabilized. Once the flowering or the crop is getting matured, again the growth rate is getting declined. So this is we call it as a crop coefficient. So it's basically like plant is growing. So each stage, depending upon its growth rate, it needs some amount of water. So again, the crop ET can also be measured at the field. using different methods. This one is explaining we explain here is the eddy covariance system. So eddy covariance system is measuring the heat flux. It's a micrometeorological station. It measures the vertical movement of fluxes from the field, especially the CO2 and water content. So once we know the stages of the crop growth and the existing climate condition, by this relationship, we can able to calculate the crop water requirement. So this is the satellite imagery taken from the Sentinel-2, and I have used the Google Earth engine. So it's an open source software. So you can also do. So if you see this video, initially the field is empty. So once the plants are starting growing, it's getting the dark green. So at the end of the season, after the harvest is over, again it's turned to brown. So like if you see the previous slide, it's exactly matching with the crop coefficient. So we can, instead of using the standard KC from the field, we can use the remote sensing information as a proxy, which we can directly get from the field for improving the irrigation. So I just want to give a case study how we can develop this remote sensing information to improve the KC. So this is the experiment carried out in our lab. So we have taken a cotton crop grown in the central part of Israel. So what we have done, we have collected the imagery of cotton crop using Sentinel-2 image for the entire growing season. So in the center of the field, we have deployed the sensor. It's eddy covariance system. So it is continuously measures the water fluxes, and from this eddy covariance, we can able to get the crop water evapotranspiration. That is a ETC. So this is the continuous measurements we have taken from the field, and we have taken only the fluxes coming from the field by clipping only to the region. So we have employed different vegetation indices, like the indices, as I told earlier. So it's an indirect indication of the canopy status. So we used different spectral indices. These indices are empirically related with the field measurements. So the idea here is we have the ground measurement and we have the remote sensing information from the field. So we try to develop the regression equations. So instead of standard KC, now we have the empirical model. We are replacing our own Earth observation in the form of vegetation indices. So there is no need of field measurements. So if you see the results, the gray shows the standard practices of which we from the government. They are giving some standard irrigation recommendations, and the blue, it shows the field measured sensor values, and the orange shows our remote sensing based prediction. So our remote sensing based predictions are well aligned with the field condition, and again, it's if you are following the field recommendation, we are trying to over irrigate. So these two are very clear from this one, and we also compared our results with other empirical models developed in the different parts of the world. So we came to the conclusion that we need to develop regional specific models, because the model which was developed in the some other regions by the different researchers giving higher yield recommendation compared to our model. So the two important conclusion we derived from this analysis is, instead of field measured values, we can go for our remote sensing based irrigation as a proxy method, and the recommendation given by the standard irrigation procedures or the recommendation we try to take from the global models which is developed from the different regions, or try to give excess irrigation quantification. So how we can use this technology on a real world application? We measured the irrigation, we measured the field values for empirical models from the satellite. So now we have the equations. These equations can be applied into the newer field, because instead of going for each field a new sensor, these empirical models give the better results. So here I have given the example of Iris.web web applications. So what they are doing is, like, they are trying to take the images from the field on continuous basis, and they are trying to access the weather information from the nearest meteorological station, and they try to calculate the spectral indices on daily basis. So once we have the spectral indices, by the field verified regression model which we develop, we replace the spectral values into the KC values, and we now we have the KC values, and we can get the reference CT from the weather station. We can easily estimate the crop water requirement by the standard ETC method. So this is one of the practical applications followed by many MNCs. They are looking for some field verified model for every region, so that they can, instead of going for the standard KC recommended by the FAO, they can go for the each specific region their own recommendation by using satellite images. So the other example is using the stem water potential. So here also we used different indices to derive the vegetation status. Instead of measuring the eddy covariance based crop water requirement, we try to measure the plant water content, that is the stem water potential, using the pressure chamber, and you can able to see the stem water potential measured in the plant is exactly matched with the vegetation indices derived from the satellites. So here in this study, they have used the high resolution satellite image. It's called PlanetScope. So it can give the spatial resolution up to 3 meters. This high resolution is very useful for small farms like 1 or 2 acres. We can able to see the crops, their changes very clearly. So the another important thing is, like, we have to choose the model, and we have to choose the indices depending on the crop type. In the previous study, we used eddy covariance system for a crop like cotton, so that is grown in the open field. But here we have used stem water potential, because the crop is grapes, so commercial vineyard grown in the Israel. So for grape, the crop mechanism is entirely different. We can't measure the ETC. So we directly measure the water content from the plant itself, and we try to develop the regression equation between this plant water content and the information derived from the satellite images. So this relationship again can be used. So we need to take measurement for every year. So once we have the relationship, we can skip our measurement from the field. We can directly use our remote sensing for next season. So there are range of sensors available. So how we can choose the sensors? So that's the next question. So we can choose the field measurement based on the crop type. Similarly, we can choose the sensors based on the what kind of region you want to select. Like you want to go for the intense study for a single field covering 1 or 2 acres. If you want to go for regional studies covering a entire district or country level planning, so depending on your need, you can choose the sensors. So the available satellite sensors can be classified into 4 categories. The first one is the Earth observation satellites, like I said, Landsat from NASA or Sentinel from the European Space Agency. So it has a spatial resolution of 10 meters and it's openly available. The major drawbacks, if you see, it's like if you have the clouds, we can't capture the image. If you remember the previous slide, which I'm showing the video of wheat field, you can see the cloudy images in between. So, for example, if a Sentinel is covering the Earth in once in 5 days, if you get 2 or 3 cloudy images, so you have the problem. So you are missing the data in the crucial juncture. So that's the main drawback if you are going for the uh, standard satellites like Sentinel or Landsat. On the other hand, the latest technology, we call it as a drones or a UAV, unmanned aerial vehicles. So what the major advantage of drones are flight from the ground, so we can plan our drone drone based flight planning or capturing of image on our convenience. Like if today we are feeling that there may be a rain or if the field is fully cloudy, we can plan the imaging for tomorrow. But again the problem comes, it's the cost effectiveness, because if you see the Earth observation satellite, it's free of cost. You can download it, and all the processing of images are standardized. But for UAV, you need a specialized engineers to operate the drones to capture the image, and the amount of the cost of sensors which is deployed in the drones will be very heavy, and there are other constraints like you can't easily uh, fly the drones in any region because it's having some security issues, like the resolutions are up to 1 centimeter, like you can see the human easily in the drone image. So people of there are some legal issues, it can be used for some spying or some military purpose. So using drone images have some its own drawbacks. Yeah, it's basically I can say it's you have to take a call like what kind of model you want to develop. You want to develop a model for a field specific, you can go for a drone. But if you want to go for some regional specific models and it can be used for a larger audience, then you can use the Earth observation satellites. So here I gave some example how the real world application we can use it for drone, sensor, satellite images combinedly. Like say for example, if you have the field and you can have the weather station nearby, you can plan your drone flighting whenever the you need. Like say for example, if it's wheat crop, 5 to 10 flying is sufficient. So depending on the sensors which you deployed in your drone, you can get the images from the various spectral bands. So you have the data of images collected from the drones, and you have the data from the weather station. So from the weather station, you calculate the reference evapotranspiration. From the drone, you calculate the spectral indices. From the empirical models which you developed from the field experiment, you can convert these spectral indices into KC. So the ETO and KC will give the crop water requirement. Similarly, from the drone, you can calculate the stress. If the plant is exposed to some stress, there is another method called crop water stress index. So you can also calculate the stress. So you have the lot of information. You know what is the crop water requirement. You know how much the plant gets stressed, and you know the from the weather station. You know how much rainfall is happened previously. Like the rainfall is happened 2 or 3 days back. So all this information can be go into the decision making systems. Sorry. So here in this study, they have used the fuzzy logic. So fuzzy logic is a highly useful technique for decision making, because any real world problem we can't make strict rules like either irrigate or don't irrigate. We have to see the different combinations, like whether the rainfall is happened, how much current plant water demand, and if it is exposed to any stress. So based on that, we have to make the fuzzy rules. So these rules will be go into the control system in the irrigation unit, and it is applied to the field. Since here it is a pivot system, so the field is slightly like having each wall. So depending on the information we derived here, we can able to irrigate for each zone, whether it is a stressed one or normal one, whether it is having enough water or if we don't have. So we can classify the condition, and the amount of water released in the each zone is different based on its requirement. If you see the previous conventional technologies, we are going for the same amount of irrigation for the entire field. But if we are with the available geospatial technology, we can go for a site-specific irrigation. So it will save the huge amount of water. So we have seen lot of discussion about how we can use this geospatial technology, how previously researchers are used, or how the commercial companies are using these techniques for irrigating the field. So let's see how we can use this technology for our Indian condition. So I would, as I told earlier, so in India, the major farmers are having the land size of less than 1 hectare. So the average land for a Indian farmer is 1 to 2 acres. So we have to think like how much farmers can afford to spend money on getting this technology. Whether it's available at free of cost, then you can easily adopt. But if they have to deploy a sensor, whether it's affordable for them. So that's a big question mark. And if you see the another interesting stat, in India, the net irrigated area is 57 million hectares, out of which only less than 1 million hectares is irrigated under drip irrigation. So there are a lot of potential. We need to improve our infrastructure facility to save the water. So right now in India, we have two challenges. So the Indian satellites, right now we have the moderate resolution with moderate spatial resolution as well as moderate temporal resolution. So we need to have the better resolution image. On the other hand, as I said, we need field verified models. So all the existing models are tend to irrigate more quantity. Similarly, we can't use the global models because we need regional models to improve the irrigation efficiency. Yeah, that's it. Yes, ma'am, I finished. Ma'am, I think I finished my. Hello.
Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
So shall we wind up the session, sir?
Yes,
Now
ma'am.
it is
It's over.
12.
So
Okay.
yeah. So it's
Participants?
people. Yeah.
Okay. So participants, if you have any queries, you can put it in the chat box. Participants, do you have any queries? You can put it in the chat box. Okay, sir. So thank you very much for the valuable session. Sir, am I
Thank you, ma'am.
audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, excuse me, this
Sir,
is
the session
Nandini.
is.
Hello? Am I audible, ma'am? Sujita, ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible. Audible.
Sir, Manivasakam, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the session. I have one question, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, can we use a drone type of things for this?
Yes, ma'am. Surely we can use. So
Is it?
the idea is drone is it's not a like a cost effective method for developing the models we can use, but for farmers level every farmers cannot afford drone, but for research purpose for developing a model to for irrigation, so drone can be surely used because it's much better and it give high quality information, so there is no doubt we can use.